my lovely, lovely, wonderful, amazing, beautiful, handsome, sweet, and lovely people. A pleasant evening to you. Beautiful people. I think this may have been spawned last evening when I was watching the news and I was listening to the very fiery, I call her effervescent, no nonsense, president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Lasonja Harrison, I think her name is. I want to know that I have the correct pronunciation of her name. I know she was the JTA's president about 2 or 3 years ago, and I surmise that she would have done such a fantastic job for her to be selected again. And she, in culmination of the meeting that was held, I'm not sure if it was a town hall meeting or a conference, but there was kind of a simultaneous or merely a symbiotic connection between the current Minister of Education, Dr. Dana Dixon, and Miss Harrison, where Dr. Dana Dixon says rules are going to be followed. Technically, rules are going to be followed. And she said, well, we are glad to hear that. And she made it expansive where she says, we cannot just even accommodate the 15 minutes devotion. We need to have something basically comprehensive. And she spoke on same, and I said, yes, now school can return to what school ought to have been for the last 5 or even more years. The agony that the administration has gone under, the pain that the teachers have undergone. And I suppose in some sense, the malady in one way or another that some students, had befallen. And when I think about that was said yesterday, and I looked at today's news, where Dr. Cassandra, who is the permanent secretary for the Ministry of Education, and during her speech, she was saying that only 20 or 22%, the caption on the news says 20% of the 30,000 students passed 5 or more subjects, to include what they call the compulsory subjects, math and English. We're not even sure what the percentage between the two subjects are or is. And she really stressed on the fact that we have to do more. It is not an if or a maybe or a but. It is a must that we have to do more. Because only 20% of the students passed 5 or more subjects. My question is, what is happening in the schools? Is there a correlation between discipline, rules not being adhered to, and students not doing well? I was watching a gentleman that I know doing his exercise, and you hear the narrator in the background says, what if I feel tired? What if I wake up and I'm really not in the mood? And he was going on, and he basically said, discipline is greater than motivation, because you can feel motivated now. It's almost like feeling. You may feel nauseated now, and then in 10 minutes you don't feel nauseated again. You may feel angry 5 minutes ago, and then the next 15 minutes you feel super happy. The feelings are very fluid and they move, like the wind and the waves. So is there a correlation? This is me coming to you, Now I'm not a, psychologist, I suppose, or somebody who, can get into the deep aspect of the mind. But when I thought about the speech or the conversation that was had, by the current JTA's president, the Minister of Education, and then today we're listening to the students who passed their CSEC examinations, and only 20%. So I'm wondering what work is being done now. Not necessarily a blame ought to be placed at the ministry. We're looking at maybe, how we'd have cultures and subcultures. Let us look at I'm looking for the most appropriate word. Let us look at, for lack of a better word or term, sub-entities. And by that I mean schools. What is taking place in schools? What is the discipline? What kind of accountability framework is being had in schools? Because the president was elated when the minister says we're not just going to focus on your proficiency in terms of your critical thinking skills, your knowledge, your wisdom, your abilities to execute the work or the impartation of the work that is given in schools, but we need some eggs or bananas to solidify and to hold the cake together. What are those? Discipline, rules, regulation. And we're not saying that you're going to be a Bakra master with a beating stick over the children's heads. Absolutely not. What we are saying is that if you break the law, then you have to pay, so to speak. I'm putting it that way. You do the crime, you do the time, so to speak. We're saying you're going to be held accountable when you break the rules. Once an infraction or infractions are committed, you should be held accountable. You should be disciplined. Back in my time, they would give you put you in detention or give you a conduct mark. And if you get a certain number of conduct marks, then it moves up to detention. If you get a certain number put into detention a certain number of times, then it can move into suspension. If you're suspended a number of times, then it can cause expulsion. And I'm not saying this to frighten the students, nor am I saying this to frighten the parents, but I'm saying that rules ought to be followed. We don't operate willy-nilly. I don't get up and just walk into your home, go into your refrigerator and take out what I feel like. I might not like the aftermath. I might not like the consequences that will take place. Generally, now the host or the owner may just pity me, but that is like looking for a needle in a haystack or looking for a needle in the sea. Is there a correlation between not adhering to rules or not enforcing the rules, the regulations, holding people accountable from administrators right down to students? Like when we talk about from the crown of our heads to the soles of our feet. Similarly, do we hold everyone accountable once they commit the infractions, once there is a breach of conduct? There has to be a code of conduct. It cannot just be brilliance and competencies and abilities. What about your attitudes? What about your characteristics? And there is a difference between your character and your personality. Your personality is your personality. It is who you are. And even with your personality, there has to be some measure of control and temperance. Because if you're extremely vivacious, we're not expecting you to become a disturbance, when class is in session, for example. Are you respectful? Are you honorable? Are you humble? Are you integrous? These are the things. And when you break this, especially repeatedly, are you held accountable? Because when you teach children discipline, that teaching will spill over into the work that they do. And that is how they become a holistic child or teenager or adult. These are things that we need to think about. 20% passed. Anyway, guys, you know what to do. Read TikTok and YouTube. Subscribe. Give me one of those lions and you can follow me.